take that for what it is. Don't get overly excited about it. We have a great, very difficult season ahead of us. And this game this week against TCU could really be that motivation to get us some steam rolling into this huge schedule that we have this year.
This game is where Austin kind of took off last year, really not until the third quarter when you guys actually got into the end zone. How's Austin been in practice, and how do you get off to a faster start against these guys this year?
Austin is a vet. He knows what he's doing. He knows the offense in and out. I think some of that rust was just not being in football, not as many games. So last year it took him a while to get in that motion, that groove. His first offensive start, or second offensive start. But I think this year we're going to get off to a fast start just by simpling down the game plan. We have a lot of young guys that are playing for the first or second time, so we're dumbing down the game plan so those guys don't have to think as much, as well as our quarterback, so we can just do what he does.
You think it'll be an advantage for some of these young wide receivers not having much film on a guy like Jordan Jones or T.J. Hammonds, what their specialties are?
Yeah, Jordan Jones, T.J. Hammonds, all those young guys that haven't played much. It's kind of a good and bad thing. It's good because you don't know what they're capable of. You don't have much film. They didn't show much against FAMU. So they have to use that to their advantage. Those DBs over at TCU kind of looking. They know what they hear. They're hearing things about them, but until you get on the field with them, it's hard to simulate.
Does it take a while to get back on the same page with Austin, or was that a pretty quick process?
It was pretty quick. I remember our first time getting back in the huddle together. Frank kind of dapped me up, and Austin said it's nice to have you back. So, we just had a relationship. Our lockers are right next to each other. He's kind of been talking to me about the whole offseason, how he needed me back and wanted me back, and he's glad to be back. And, we just have that relationship. So, of course, it's going to take us a while to get the timing. I think we kind of nailed that down these past couple of weeks, but, we still have that relationship.
Welcome in. It's our Thursday edition of On the Hill with Pat Jenkins Sports Talk Radio. This segment is brought to you by Lindsay & Associates with locations in Fayetteville, also locations in Rogers. This segment is also brought to you by Locomotion. Looking for a place to take the kids, have a great time? Locomotion, located in Fayetteville, just below the Northwest Arkansas Mall. And if you don't get a chance to catch us here on our live stream of On the Hill with Pat Jenkins Sports Talk Radio, you can always catch us on our live podcast. Just go to the iHeartRadio as On the Hill podcast each and every day on iHeartRadio. Had a little technical difficulty, sorry to be getting in, but we're glad to be with you all. We have a packed show. Coming up next, we're going to take a real quick break, and we're going to get this thing started with Jake Wimberly of the Drive at 5. Time to talk a little Mississippi State Bulldogs. Back in a moment. It's On the Hill with Pat Jenkins.
It was tough, man. You hate to see one of your guys go down, but Corlin's a strong young man, strong in his faith. Got a great support, family support. That's awesome. We're gonna support him here. Our group was real disappointed, real down yesterday after practice when we heard the news, but I expect him to come back stronger. Matt and his staff do a great job. It's not the first guy we've lost to a knee injury, and I don't want to sound insensitive, but I know he'll bounce back and be fine.
Do you know what happened, or
it was he just got tugged while he was planting, and freak accident. Unfortunate, but it's football.
Coach, you guys didn't get into the end zone this game last year until like late in the third quarter on offense. How do you get off to a faster start against these guys?
We just got to stick to the script. You know, we got to go out there and execute. You know, we had an opportunity last year, I think, at one point to go up 27-7, and weren't able to do it. But, you know, through the resolve of the kids we had on the team last year and a lot of the guys we got back, we were able to come out with a victory. But to answer your question, we just got to stick to the script. We got to take care of us, and if we're able to do that, we'll be fine.
Smaller in the secondary and at linebacker, you think you guys can exploit that at all?
I'm hoping so. You know, I've had a lot of experience playing against Coach Patterson's teams, you know, from my days in the Big 12, and obviously last year. Small, fast, whatever you want to call them, they're good. They're coached well. They do a great job of getting to the ball. In the secondary, they're very technique sound, communicate a lot, and they're all on the same page. So it's going to be a tremendous challenge for us, but one, like always, we're looking forward to, and we'll go out and find out on Saturday night.
You got Jared back in the game a little bit this past week. What do you expect from him this weekend?
I just expect him to play a little bit more. You know, he's been last week we only practiced him one day, and this week he's been in practice every day and has gone through every period. You know, he's starting to loosen up. So I'm expecting him to come out and have a big game. My big thing is to keep him healthy. You know, everybody knows what he's coming back from, but to keep him healthy and let him go out there and do what he's capable of doing.
Welcome back. It's our Thursday edition of On the Hill with Pat Jenkins Sports Talk. Brought to you each and every day here from 1 to 2 p.m. Want to let everybody know that this segment is brought to you by Lindsay & Associates with locations in Fayetteville, also 2 locations in Rogers. If you're also looking for a place to take your kids, try Locomotion. It also, too, is a sponsor of On the Hill, located in Fayetteville just below the Northwest Arkansas Mall. And also, if you don't get a chance to catch us here on our live stream, make sure you go to iHeartRadio as we podcast On the Hill with Pat Jenkins each and every day on iHeartRadio. But we want to continue on. We got a lot of SEC football to talk about. So we're going to go down to Mississippi and catch up with our own, the Driving Fives, Jake Wimberly. Jake, welcome to the Hill, my man.
Pat, happy Thursday to you, brother. It's almost another weekend of college football. I can't wait.
Absolutely. Let's recap that home opener real quick down in Starkville for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Jake, what do you feel good about coming out of that football game? And then, too, what are some of the things that Coach Mullen and both the offensive and defensive staff feel like they can get better at?
Well, you know, you play a team like Charleston Southern, Pat, and you know you're supposed to do what Mississippi State did, which was dominate that ball game if you're an SEC team. So you feel good about that. And you know, you look at things in the game. You got some time at running back. You was able to shuffle in 3 or 4 guys there. You got some time with Nick Fitzgerald and those young receivers. That was good. Defense held Charleston Southern, I think, 33 total yards, but they were a one-dimensional team. So all that's really good and fun and great, but again, it's Charleston Southern. So, you know, you step up the competition this week with Louisiana Tech. Some things to get better. Offensive snaps, the snap center to quarterback exchange has to get better. There was some low snaps throughout that ball game. A new center in the mix for Mississippi State, so still trying to work that out. Some pass protection and run blocking assignments were blown in that game. Want to get better at that. And then, of course, you still have to wonder about a defensive secondary, Pat, that didn't have any challenges last week because Charleston Southern doesn't throw the ball. You know, they really don't. So you wonder how good that back end on that secondary is. Are they better than the 31 touchdowns they gave up last year, which led the SEC? Not a statistic you want to lead the league in. So all of those are questions still left undetermined for Mississippi State, and they'll have a much tougher task this weekend as they travel, over the rest of Louisiana.
Jake, I want to talk about a guy that I know the fan base down in Starkville is really, really expecting big things from, and that's Nick Fitzpatrick. How do you think Nick fared in Game 1 with all the extra hype based on how he finished last season heading into this year? Do you think he handled it quite well?
Yeah, he did. It was a very average performance for him. I mean, he was about where I kind of thought he would be, somewhere around, and I don't remember the exact number, 17 and 30. He was right around 53%, so he's got to get that completion percentage on up. Last year he averaged about 53, 54% for the season. You could tell they were holding him back a little bit. He only ran 7 times in the ball game. We know that's where his strength is as an electric runner. Pound for pound, he's the best running quarterback in the country, and I don't even think it's close.
Right.
But they held him back. I think you'll see him do more of that as the season progresses. But yeah, I mean, I would call it an admirable performance, but I wouldn't call it anything that was spectacular. As a matter of fact, Greg McElroy of the SEC Network, I think rated him as a B- performance, and that's about what I would have. If I was going to put a letter grade to it, that's where I would have put it.
Now, jumping forward, as you stated earlier, Jake, the competition ramps up. Arkansas is real familiar with this next expo you guys are going to be hosting in Starkville as they played La Tech last year. Talk about what Mississippi State has to do first on the offensive side of the ball to ensure some success and give them the best chance to win versus the Bulldogs of La Tech.
Well, I think they got to establish a physicality up front. I mean, I think that's when you talk about SEC teams, that's always what you talk about. I mean, you look at Florida and Michigan this past weekend. Florida just got outmatched. They got beat up physically. I mean, you look at Alabama, they beat up Florida State physically. So it's all about being physical at the line of scrimmage, offensive and defensively. You're going into a hostile environment. Louisiana Tech is the biggest game they will play on their campus this year. So it'll be a rowdy crowd, from a team in Conference USA that's going to be one of the better teams. They got a Mississippi kid, a Mississippi product playing quarterback there in Jamar Smith from Meridian High School. I had a chance to see him several times over the course of his career as I covered high school football here in the state. So he's going to have that chip on his shoulder. So that's why I say you got to establish a physicality in this game, or a physical nature in this game, and you got to take it to Louisiana Tech because, as you know, Pat, you get into these ball games. Mississippi State saw this in 2008. Now that was a different year, a different group of kids, and a different coaching staff. But they went over there and lost that ball game in Ruston. You can't let this team hang around and have them believing that they can win in the second half.
Now, and it is on the road, your first road game defensively, Jake. What does this team have to do to kind of keep the crowd out of it and negate a lot of momentum versus that La Tech offense? What's some of the scheme that Coach Mullen and that defensive staff feel like they have to do in this ball game?
Well, that a team like Louisiana Tech, they're going to spread you sideline to sideline. They're going to line receivers up outside the numbers, inside the numbers. So they're going to stretch you and try to create lanes and space. So you've got to hope that this back end with Brandon Bryan and Mark McLaurin, Jamal Peters, and all these defensive backs, they can come up and they can be physical and defend in one-on-one situations. You got to tackle in open field, and also you got to hope that Jeffrey Simmons, who's now shaded over the center at nose guard, a Montez Sweat, a transfer who played at Michigan State, who had a really good opening weekend, and a young kid like Fletcher Adams on that defensive line, that they can get in that backfield and disrupt this offense. From getting running backs down before they ever get going to getting pressure on Jamar Smith. I think it all starts up front, but I'll be interested to see, Pat, how this back end plays, because La Tech knows Mississippi State could not defend the pass last year, and you can bet they're going to go right at that secondary to see if they've gotten any better.
Talking with Jake Wimberly of the Drive at 5. He covers the Mississippi State Bulldogs. We're talking Louisiana Tech, Mississippi State game keys as the Mississippi State Bulldogs make their way to Ruston, Louisiana to take on the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. But, Jake, I want to talk about injury-wise. What's the health status of that entire football team? Each and every game, it's a contact sport. People talk about injuries, but how's Mississippi State heading into this game? Is everything all hands on deck?
Yeah, all hands on deck for the game, Pat. I think the biggest casualties came before an opening kickoff, and that was a couple defensive players from that JUCO class that they hauled in, where they had 9 guys. They weren't academically eligible. We could spend a whole show on that about the junior college system and things that went wrong with as far as getting these kids in. But, Chauncey Rivers, a guy that was expected to start on the defensive end. He's a guy that played at Georgia under Todd Grantham, went on to East Mississippi, and played in that, one of those last chance U teams. He can't play this year, so he's out. I would say the biggest casualties came via academics and being ineligible and having to redshirt. But as far as on the field, everybody that played last week, by all accounts, looks healthy. They should have a full staff.
Well, as always, my man, we'll come back and recap this road contest versus La Tech. And then, Jake, we'll talk about that SEC opener you guys have to take place next Saturday in Starkville versus the LSU Tigers. But be blessed, my man, as always, Jake. And thanks for taking time out on the hill.
You bet. Talk to you next week. Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it.
Jake Wimberly of the Drive at 5 came on and talk a little Bulldogs versus Bulldogs, La Tech versus Mississippi State keys. I think Jake has said it best. This is going to be a football team that each and every week is going to have to get better. But, under that defense coordinator, Todd Grantham, and knowing Todd as we have during his time with Louisville and multiple stops he's made throughout the college football scene, he's going to be really aggressive, I think, and anticipate Mississippi State to get out. I really think, Nick Fitzpatrick will be the X factor in this ball game, and just make the plays when he has to make, as I consider Nick one of the top 2 or if not the top quarterback in the SEC this year. But we're going to step away. We got a little audio from Kurt Anderson, or I should say Frank Ragnow. We'll hear what Frank has to say about Ty Clary and also, just what he's looking forward to this Saturday in Donald W. Reynolds. And after that, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. We're going to talk a little Tide. It's On the Hill with Pat Jenkins. Back in a moment.
He did tremendous. Hats off to him. That kid knows where he's going and knows what he's on. Obviously, I'm going to have to help him out a little more than usual and have to tell him where he's going and everything like that. But when he knows where he's going, he's quite the player. And by the end of his 4 years here, he's going to be a really good football player, I'll tell you that.
Last year he's playing like down the road in tournament field. Now he's going to be playing against the top 25 team on CBS in a big stadium. How do you think he's going to handle that?
He'll be fine. He'll have to lean on guys like me, guys like Johnny Gibson, and all the other guys in the room, but he'll be fine. The thing that I've noticed about him is he works hard. He's blue collar, and nothing has seemed too big for him yet. Obviously, we haven't played on the biggest stages, but I'm excited to see how he accepts the challenge.
Yeah. Has he surprised you? Because, I guess he's like what they call a blue shirt. He's now on scholarship till next semester.
Well, you saw right when he came in the summer, this kid's got a chance to be good. He's got the feet, he's got the 1-2, so I wouldn't say I'm too surprised.
What's your thoughts about opening up in Fayetteville? Probably a louder environment also.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think with the construction, everything closed off will be louder. The one thing is, the more fans, the more loud they can get, the better, so I'm excited for it.
Mike, how do you think the coaching has helped this year with your line coach?
Oh, it's been tremendous. Coach Anderson does just an amazing job of not only explaining what to do, but how to do. He explains the concepts of everything, and he could be better in some areas, that's for sure. But overall, it's pretty good.
As a young guy, what's impressed you the most about Kyle?
He plays hard and he finishes, and that's one thing that I think as a young player, that's the biggest deal is if you've got that finish in you and you play through the whistle, that's what's going to make everything just so much better.
His first start, obviously, as a freshman, what did you think of his performance overall and how he was able to stay composed?
He did great. Obviously, there are moments where he was a little bit confused and everything, but that's why I'm there to try to help him out. But when he knew what he was doing and knew what he was on, it was incredible. I knew he was going to play well, but he surprised me at how well he played. So I'm excited to see how he keeps on taking the steps into this week.
What have you seen?
It's our Thursday edition of On the Hill with Pat Jenkins Sports Talk. This show is brought to you and sponsored by Lindsay & Associates with locations in Fayetteville, also locations in Rogers. This show is also, too, brought to you by Locomotion. Looking for a good place to have a good time with the kids and even where a grown-up can be a kid? Locomotion is the place to be. It's located in Fayetteville just below the Northwest Arkansas Mall. Go check them out. And if you don't get a chance to catch us here on our live stream of On the Hill with Pat Jenkins Sports Talk on our YouTube page or our Facebook Live, you can go catch us on our podcast each and every day on iHeartRadio as we podcast On the Hill each and every day on iHeartRadio. I want to give a big shout out, but let's continue on. We got more SEC football to talk about. And we want to go to Tuscaloosa and talk about that real big one I think the whole country had their eye on and get some more keys for an upcoming game the Tide have. So what better way to talk to Touchdown Alabama's Stephen M. Smith. Stephen, welcome to the Hill, my man. let's recap the Florida State game. Stephen, when I was watching it in my home on Saturday night, fairly close to about the middle of that third quarter, Alabama gets the special teams. Big play from one of their running backs, Damian Harris. Talk about that, and then what does Coach Saban feel about, coming out of that ball game that maybe he feels good about, and also, too, what is the Tide going to have to improve on?
Well, that special teams play by Damian Harris was really huge, a block punt, and it just shows how much Nick Saban values all three phases of the game. Joe Panunzio, the special teams coach, deserves a lot of credit. He really got those guys ready to play in coverage where that's concerned. There was a couple of punts that were down inside the 5, a couple of big hits from young players, Dylan Moses, Daniel Wright, a couple of freshmen getting some big tackles with special teams. Of course, the Dylan Moses hit forced a fumble that was recovered by Keith Holcomb, and of course, Minka Fitzpatrick blocking a field goal. So Joe Panunzio, the special teams coach, deserves a lot of credit for getting those boys ready to play and really having some huge impact plays in that game. In the game, I felt like Saban was happy with the defense in the second half, getting pressure to DeAndre Francois. Francois did a great job in the first half, evading the rush, stretching the field, finding guys open. But I felt like in the second half, Alabama got that pressure to him, hit him a couple of times, caused that completion percentage to kind of drop a bit and forcing some turnovers. So Nick Saban happy with the defense in the second half, happy with the special teams, the coverage-wise, throughout the entire game. But the one thing he wants to see this team get better at is consistency on offense, the offensive line, having that physicality, blocking at the point of attack, putting a hat on a hat, and driving these guys off the football. And Florida State, give them credit. They sent the house. They blitzed almost every down. Alabama failed to pick up a lot of those blitzes. So being able to block at the point of attack, number one, and then two, for Jalen Hurts, continuing to read through his progressions. There were moments where I know he probably didn't have a lot of time, but he looked at one read, and if one read wasn't there, you're still seeing him kind of pull the ball down and take off instead of showing more so that patience in the pocket, trusting your guys, putting the ball in spots where your guys can make the play. So offensively, more physicality from the front line, more patience from Jalen Hurts in the pocket. But I felt like defensively and special teams, Saban was pretty pleased with what he saw.
When you flip forward, there's always, and it's old adage, you're going to get better from game 1 to game 2. You guys are hosting the Fresno State Bulldogs. If you're Coach Jeremy Pruitt, you brought back a very young front seven. I think this is the youngest front seven, as you and I talked over the summer leading into fall camp, that Coach Saban had ever had there at Alabama. Lost over about 35 or more sacks from that group that are going to be playing on Sundays. What does Alabama have to do versus this Fresno State offense to really even bring more pressure and give them the best chance to win on Saturday?
A lot of young guys are going to have to step up, Pat. Let's just be honest. A lot of young players are going to have to step up. The LeBron Rays, the Vandarius Cowens, the Jamie Mosleys, the Ben Davises, so Ben Davis still on scout team. A lot of young players are going to have to step up. But what's been interesting, this week in practice, Alabama actually put senior defensive end Deshaun Hand an outside linebacker and wanted to test and see how he could do in a rush situation getting after the quarterback. And to be honest, he looks pretty good. Really agile, really quick, 6'4", 288 pounds. When he came in that 2014 signing class, the kid was a 5-star from Woodbridge, Virginia. It took him a while to not just get stronger in the weight room, but fine-tune his technique, break down film to see how teams will play him. He played behind a lot of great guys, Ashawn Robinson, Jaron Reed, Jonathan Allen, Dalvin Tomlinson. So now, it's Deshaun Hand's team where the front line is concerned, but just seeing him at outside linebacker in practice from watching a couple of clips, he looks good, and this would be pretty interesting.
When you talk about playing in a football game with so much expectation, so much talent on the football field, naturally injuries are going to play a part in it. Florida State loses their starting quarterback in DeAndre Francois. talk about the injury update. You guys lost a few linebackers, but talk about that in depth, Stephen, and who are going to be some of the guys that Coach Pruitt and that defensive staff are going to really be looking forward to step in there and fill that void, because you lost two good ones there for a short period of time there at Alabama.
It's a big ball, Pat, to lose Christian Miller for the season, a torn tricep, or torn bicep, and then you lose Terrell Lewis for the season with a torn ligament in his elbow. And to kind of bring this full circle, Christian Miller and Terrell Lewis were your top two strong side linebackers. They were also your top two pressure outside linebackers. Christian Miller at 6'4", 240 pounds, had finally put on the weight that he needed to, defend at the attack point. He also had finally learned, all of the system, whether it's the nickel package, the dime, the wheel, the Sam, the jack linebacker position. He had finally learned all of those roles and was able to really, be that contributing, impactful player. And to lose him for the season, that hurts. Terrell Lewis, somebody that's a freak athlete at 6'5", 254 pounds from Washington, D.C., just a freak athlete. Had 5 tackles, including the tackle for loss against Florida State. He played in the second half, but he got hurt, so you lose both of those guys for the year. Anthony Jennings, who is your starter at jack linebacker, a young man who came into that 2015-2016 class from Dadeville, Alabama. He got hurt at an ankle sprain, or an ankle injury. He had to have surgery on his ankle. He will not play this week. Alabama hopefully is hoping to have him back by the Vanderbilt game. And then Rashaan Evans, who got banged up against Florida State, he had a groin injury. It's a slight strain, so nothing too bad there. But he will not play this week. Alabama hoping to bring him back by Vanderbilt. So you're down 4 linebackers, but 2 for the entire season, Terrell Lewis and Christian Miller. Alabama really looking for, as I mentioned, a lot of the young guys, the Ryan Rays, the Fundarius Cowan, the Keith Holcombs, who have been, they're looking for a mixture of young players and also players, Pat, that have been there a while, but just haven't had enough playing time. So there'll be a mix and match of guys the next 2 weeks heading into the Vanderbilt game as the SEC schedule opens up the Tide. But I would also watch Deshaun Hand, the defensive lineman who's been getting some reps at that outside backer position. Putting him there does more than just shore up that linebacking core, having some experience, but it also gives guys like Josh Frazier, Raekwon Davis, Isaiah Boggs, Quentin Williams, Johnny Dwight, just so many players, Fadarian Mathis. It gives a lot of these young players on this defensive line a chance to play more. So I would look at Deshaun Hand possibly playing at that jack linebacker spot also.
Well, as always, my man, we're definitely going to come back and recap this Fresno State Bulldog game, and we'll get ahead and start talking and recap and talk game keys when you guys host Colorado State this time next week. But as always, have a blessed day, Stephen, and thanks for taking time out on the hill, my man.
Pat, Demetrius, man, I appreciate y'all.
That was Stephen M. Smith, Touchdown Alabama. We're going to continue on, take a quick break, give you a little Kurt Anderson audio, and then we'll bring in Fletcher Whiteley of AggieYell.com. We're going to talk a little Kevin Sumlin and recap just what happened in Inglewood versus UCLA. It's On the Hill with Pat Jenkins. Back in a moment.
And we went out and recruited 3 tackles when he was in camp. And what was communicated to him throughout the entire process, I told him from day one that if I had a guard position, you'd be the first guard that I would offer in this country because of the way that he played. And I think that was part of the reason why, obviously, Ty came here. But my job as the line coach is to play the 5 guys that are playing the best football, and it's not an indictment on anybody else, because Brian Wallace has been playing good football. Jake Rawlers has been playing good football. Zach Rogers has been playing outstanding football. But Ty Clary the last 2 weeks was playing even better football, and so to me that's an added bonus. We continue to have depth, guys that have started games that are in that 2 deep, and obviously if you see that game when the 2s went in there, they marched right down the field and scored and graded out extremely well. It's not a who's on scholarship or anything like that. Nobody is entitled to a starting spot. I've told guys from day one that every day you're fighting to earn a starting spot. No one's going to be given anything, and so you got to battle for your spot on a daily basis. That's how you strain. That's how you strive, and that's how you perfect your craft. That's how you get better. And I think we're very fortunate to have a guy like Ty Clary in his caliber, and he's got a lot of football ahead of him. But he's off to a great start.
Is he surprised you? I mean, coming in and winning a starting job like that, you don't expect that from a true freshman, I wouldn't think.
No, I mean, I think surprised. Yeah, because I think we had great depth. We had guys that had experience. I knew he was a heck of a player, but until you get your hands on him and you're working with him in the meeting rooms, in the classroom, and on the field, you kind of your eyes open up to a work ethic, the type of strain that he plays with, the athleticism that he has, and so. When his opportunity to get in there and the second scrimmage with the 2s, and all of a sudden he went out there against our 1 defense and was physical and assignment sound and finishing and was great in protection. And as the next 2 weeks progressed, he was able to put himself in a position where, in my opinion, it was clear that he was the starting guard.
Was that development?
Welcome back. It's our Thursday edition of On the Hill with Pat Jenkins Sports Talk. This segment is brought to you each and every day by Lindsay & Associates with locations in Fayetteville, also 2 locations in Rogers. This segment is also brought to you by Locomotion. Looking for a good place to have a great time with your kids, and even where a grown-up can be a kid, try Locomotion. It's located in Fayetteville, just below the Northwest Arkansas Mall. And if you don't get a chance to catch us here on our live stream of Pat Jenkins Sports Talk, be sure and go and catch us on our podcast. That's on iHeartRadio, as we podcast each and every day on the Hill. It's in entirety. But we want to continue on with our SEC football talk. And the biggest talk going on has to be out of College Station, Texas. And we're going to catch up with our good buddy, Fletcher Whiteley of AggieYell.com. Fletcher, welcome to the Hill, my man.
Thanks. I wonder what we're going to talk about today.
Let's get into it. Let's recap, the last quarter and a half of that UCLA ball game, and just, what do you think was some of the extenuating factors for that outcome?
They, for some odd reason, decided not to run the football, even though they had they had well over 200. They might have been getting near 300 yards rushing. They just, for some odd reason, decided to get away from it, start throwing the football, and for some odd reason, no one decided to want to cover a tight end down the middle of the field. I think UCLA ran the same play about 15 times in the fourth quarter, and A&M couldn't do anything to stop it. Probably one of the biggest collapses I've ever seen in college football, and one of the biggest failures coaching that I've seen in college football.
Which leads me into that, Fletcher. I know there's a lot of talk about Kevin Sumlin. The AD came out during the meetings in Destin earlier this summer and talked about, the importance of Coach Sumlin and winning. Then on Sunday, one of the main regents, he gets on Facebook, big-time attorney out of Houston, and makes, some pretty big statement, about Coach Sumlin. Talk about that, and what do you think is going on? How much leeway does Kevin have, after a game like just this past Sunday?
Very, very little. It would be a surprise if he made it through the rest of the season. The regent who made that statement, he's a very outspoken guy, to say the least. This isn't the first time he's made outlandish statements like this. He does have a lot of stroke at Texas A&M, And I do know for a fact that he's not the only Board of Regents member at A&M that doesn't have the same opinion. There's more than one at A&M that they want Kevin Sumlin gone, and they want him gone sooner rather than later.
Now let's get up into this injury. Part of football is a collision sport. We always know that injuries are going to happen. Talk about how A&M is health-wise heading into this home opener versus Nicholls State on Saturday.
Well, quarterback Nick Starkle, who started the game, focus split more than likely, he's done for the year. And then you've got Donovan Wilson, who he had a surgery as well. More than likely, he's done for the year as well. So they're pretty banged up a lot, in some with two key players, your starting quarterback, and then your top safety. So they've got some injury issues. Luckily, they've got a couple of games to kind of figure some things out with Nicholls State and then Louisiana Lafayette.
Now let's also talk about that quarterback. I know Kellen Mond, a true freshman, was in the ball game, multiple snaps, and pretty much, the middle of that first half all the way, to that fourth quarter, seemed like he was a little uncomfortable. You guys have a senior also too that wasn't able to play. Do you think there's going to be a shakeup this Saturday at that quarterback spot, or has Kevin Sumlin just in that offensive staff just not said anything, or is it a game time decision?
Well, the weird thing is Jake Kubinak was there at UCLA. He was at the game, but he was hurt. And for some odd reason, Kevin Sumlin wanted to, for lack of a better word, he wanted to lie about it. Again, another quarterback today that Kevin Sumlin has lied about an injury on. For some odd reason, Jake Kubinak was there. He was never going to play. No one knows why he was there. And, you got Kellen Mond, who's probably going to start the next game. Will Jake Kubinak, be the backup if things go astray? No one really knows. They've got another true freshman named Connor Blumlick, who came out of the Houston area. He was expected to redshirt. No one really saw him playing this season. No one really saw him maybe playing for at least 2 to 3 years. But he might get all of a sudden shifted into the backup role just because of Kevin Sumlin once again kind of mismanaging the quarterback position.
Talking with Fletcher Whiteley of AggieYale.com here on the Hill with Pat Jenkins Sports Talk. This segment is brought to you by Lindsay & Associates with locations in Fayetteville, also 2 in Rogers. This segment is also brought to you by Locomotion. It's located in Fayetteville just below the Northwest Arkansas Mall. And if you don't get a chance to catch us here on our live stream of On the Hill with Pat Jenkins Sports Talk, you can always catch us on our podcast on iHeartRadio each and every day. Last question before I let you go, Fletcher. You're real cemented in the recruiting as you cover that part of A&M football as well. What are some of the recruits saying with so much hot seat talk and the fact that, or the talk that Kevin may not make it through the season? Have you talked to some of the kids and, what's their take on this? Would it open up recruiting, or that's still yet to be determined?
Well, right now, if A&M's recruiting kind of all is fine. We'll see how it plays later on in the year when it's kind of expected Kevin Sumlin is relieved of his duties, barring a miraculous turnaround this season. But right now everything's fine in that department. Now if A&M loses to Arkansas or South Carolina, and Kevin Sumlin might get the axe, which is kind of maybe the projected timeline if he loses to Arkansas or South Carolina, then things could get a little interesting.
Well, as always, my man, have a blessed weekend. Enjoy the game. And always, Fletcher, thanks for taking time out on the Hill.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
That was Fletcher Week of AggieYale.com. I want to bring in my co-host and producer as we're about to wrap this show up. I want to let everybody know that this show has been brought to you by Lindsay & Associates with locations in Rogers, also 2 in Fayetteville. This show has also been brought to you by Locomotion. It's located in Fayetteville just below the Northwest Arkansas Mall. And lastly, if you don't get a chance to catch us here on our live stream, make sure you go and you can listen to On the Hill with Pat Jenkins Sports Talk in its entirety on iHeartRadio. But Demetrius, with all that we've heard, which program did you take the most out of, be it Jake Wimberly at Mississippi State, Stephen M. Smith at Touchdown Alabama, and then lastly Fletcher Whiteley of AggieL.com?
I'm definitely going to have to go with Fletcher. There's a lot going on down there at Texas A&M, and that's a really, 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 really big game on Arkansas' schedule. That's the difference between a lot of people saying they're going to go 5-0 going into that Alabama game, being that they beat TCU this weekend. So it's going to be interesting. I think that's really going to be the turning point in Arkansas's kind of schedule. Again, depending on what happens this week with TCU, but again, I think it's a great year for Arkansas to get that upset over Texas A&M. I wouldn't even call it an upset. I think now that you've seen the team and the type of game that they've played, I think a lot of people are leaning towards Arkansas winning that game with the way that Texas A&M played. I don't think they're a bad team. I think they just lost a little composure. The youth kind of took over in that game. But again, I think that's going to be an interesting matchup once the Arkansas Razorbacks go to Texas to face the Aggies.
I agree with you. I think, Kevin, it is kind of hard to coach under such hot seat pressure when you know that your margin of error, gets tighter and smaller and smaller. Also, too, when you're in the segment with Stephen M. Smith, it's going to be real. I'm real curious to see how this Alabama defensive team puts pieces together and continues the dominance that they've been known for under Jeremy Pruitt going into year 2, and before that, Kirby Smart. We all know that Nick Saban is a defensive coach, has a tremendous amount of talent on that side of the football. I'm also too curious to see throughout the season, and even particular Saturday, how does Jalen Hurts? He didn't throw too much, so you still don't know about how he is as a passer. That's what I'm going to be looking out for. And also, too, when you talk to Jake Wimberly of Mississippi State and the drive at 5, I think this is going to be a better Mississippi State Bulldog team than what some may think. I do think there's a strong question mark, and as evidence, I know defense coordinator Todd Grantham really is concerned on how his secondary is going to perform this upcoming weekend and going forward. But also, too, real quick, we got about 2 or 3 minutes. Let's talk about Arkansas. We've heard audio from Jared Cornelius, who's 100%, a guy that I think, Austin Allen is really happy to have. He talked about the chemistry that he and Austin have. Also, too, Michael Smith talked about, the wide receiver and the importance of a senior such as Jared Cornelius. And then we flipped over to the offensive line. Frank Ragnow and Kurt Anderson, the offensive line coach, talked about that true freshman, Ty Clary. What are some things that you think is going to be big storylines when listening to the Razorback and their coaches' audio heading into this TCU game? What say you on that?
I think it's all going to boil down to those skill positions. I'm really eager to see the battle between Arkansas's defensive backs and TCU's wide receivers, and vice versa with TCU's defensive backs versus Arkansas wide receiver. I think that's really going to be where the game is really dictated, and of course that offensive line. You heard a lot from Kurt Anderson speaking on the way Brian Wallace came out and played, just kind of Johnny Gibson as well, and just how Ty Clary ended up taking that starting position. But I see his not to compare the two, but I see his season going a lot like Yelta Froholt's his first year coming in the SEC. I think Ty Clary has a little bit more technique because he's been playing offensive line a lot longer than Yelta Froholt. But as far as the adjustments between playing SEC school and playing other guys from high school, I think that's where that comparison is going to come in, where he's going to miss a few blocks and give up a couple of sacks. But all in all, I think he's going to be a guy that really fits that role well. And I think once the season kind of progresses and we get in around Game 6, Ty Clary is really going to be a guy that we have to lean on our offensive line.
I'm really impressed with Ty. I've had a chance to watch Ty at junior high out here in Fayetteville at Woodland Junior High School, also too at Fayetteville High School, and a lot of people, I think fail to realize Ty had multiple Division I offers. Also too, Ty clearly was a guy that had the chance to go against Akil Byers, an Under Armour All-American, a young man that he faced junior high school.
Great point.
Akil was one of those guys that was going to be in that 2 deep in Columbia for the Missouri Tigers, had not had the knee injury, so he's used to playing high major division talent. Fayetteville High is one of the better, if not the best, high school football program in the state of Arkansas. So I'll have to be one to say I'm not surprised. I think with the fact a lot of the fans walked away talking about the receivers and how they didn't, perform. I think having Jared Cornelius back is kind of going to, it's going to settle down that wide receiver core. When you have a guy with that much experience that can kind of be someone Austin Allen can really hone in on, that's going to be real, real big going forward. And so we want to wrap up today's show. Want to thank my producer, Demetrius Johnson. Want to also thank Jake Wimberly of the Drive at 5 for talking Mississippi State. Also, too, want to give a big shout-out to Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama for joining us. And lastly, Fletcher Whiteley of AggieYell.com. Wouldn't want to be Kevin Sumlin, would you, D?
Nah, Sumlin's really under some heat. I kind of feel bad for the guy, because he's one of the few African-American coaches that's in the SEC. So when he first got his opportunity to come in and coach, I was a big fan, really glad. But, we talk about it a lot off the air, and that's what happens when you get a lot of success your first early years. Sometimes it's good to have that Brett Bielema process where you're just improving year in and year out and adding one win. But when you go, like you said many times, when you get the Heisman and you beat Alabama the first year, there's a lot of pressure on you.
Hey, want to give thank you to Lindsay and Associates with locations in Fayetteville and Rogers. Also to Locomotion, located in Fayetteville, just below the Northwest Arkansas Mall. Tomorrow, we're going to talk TCU, Arkansas, multiple guests. We're even going to talk a little recruiting. Hope you're here. It's the segment we like on Fridays. We call it the A. Hope you'll join us. Until tomorrow, it's On the Hill with Pat Jenkins. Have a blessed one.